Okay, most of you probably recall last term we talked about this. We covered many-to-many using checkboxes, and it's a great technique. It's really not that difficult, although getting that formatting of that uh, uh, HTML page can be a little tricky at times. I'll show you a trick that helps with that too today. But of course, we can run into some limitations. When you have lots and lots of options, it just gets crowded with so many checkboxes on the screen. It's kind of loses its value as an effective user interface. So one of the things that a student had asked me was, what about a multi-list select box? So I played around with the different options that way, and I'm going to go through a couple of scenarios. It's amazing how little change we have to make to our code from the checkbox approach, because actually the multi-select list box is even easier. Okay, so I'm going to start by downloading the sample code that we did at the end of that video that is still up on YouTube. You can rewatch that anytime you want. So I'll just save this file here into, I made a DS folder here. Okay. 7, 6. Oh, I should have had my Jeopardy music ready. 3, 2, 1. I love to count. Okay, here we are. Don't forget, always a good practice when you're downloading these to, for some reason I don't have my unblock button, but if I did, I'd click it, and that would be even better. Okay, so I'll just extract this here, and we'll open it up. Now this is basically the same code. I've hardly made any change. The only thing I did do in this is I did add a couple, just for convenience, going back and forth between different systems. I have different versions of the connection string all ready to go. So one if you're using SQL Express 2012, LocalDB, one for 2014, which is what I like to use at home on my system there. And for here in the classroom, though, we know that we're best to use, because of the silly login issues we have with our image, just to use the SQL Server Express running on our host machine here, right? So let me just uncomment that one, and I'll comment out this. And that should work. Okay, doesn't like that. All right, good enough. So I have the connection string set up for the local use here. I don't believe there's a database in this. No, there's not. So I can just do a quick build, make sure everything builds okay. Come into my package manager console and make the database. If I do get a silly error message, all I have to do is use that quick cheat. It does change the name of the database file. If I've recently been working on one here that, come on, wake up. Oh, I just didn't give it any room. There you go. Okay, so I should be able to update database. And again, if I fail to build, well, let me see my build errors then. Oh, okay. It's because I didn't remove all the comments properly here. Okay. Silly me. All right. Build again. There we go. So we should be building our database, and then we can start actually doing some changes. All right. So also up in Blackboard, I posted a little file here. I'm just going to copy paste out of this one. And for the most part, just follow this along. So you can do the same. I'm just going to move this off the screen so I can see what I'm doing, but it's right there available for you. So really, just to convert our current system here to use as an in-between step, one multi-list select box, right? All we really have to do is come into our, remember we did all this work in the players controller, right? If I bring up the player controller, the idea in this scenario is there were multiple bats you would be authorized to use, right? It was a silly example, but I'm stuck with it now. It's been my most popular video on YouTube, believe it or not. Anyway, there you go. So all we really have to do is come down here to my populate assign bat data. That was the little method we added. so that we could get the collection of bats ready to present in the view, currently using checkboxes, but we're going to switch that. So right now, this line of code, right, just adding a bats collection to the view bag, okay, coming from this list that we created up here, list of objects based on our view model, right? So all I really need to do is just change that so that instead of just adding this list, I'm going to make it a specific type of list. That type is the multi-select list. We've used the select list before, not much different. It's just that this is geared towards a multi-select, list control. And again, I just pass the exact same collection, right? Same collection works perfectly here. Each one has its own assigned true or false attribute, and that works fine in this scenario. The internal value will be the bat ID, the bat name will be what is displayed. And with the multi-select list, one of the overloads allows us to pass in a simple array of values that should be selected. Well, guess what? We already had that. It was right up here. It was in our code already that we created this, basically this hash set of the currently selected bats for the player, right? That was already in our code. So all we have to do is toArray, and then now it's the right kind of animal to satisfy the overload here and build our multi-select list. So that's the only change in code that I need here. So let's just, for fun of it, let's go into the views. I'll just grab the player edit view. Okay, I could also do the create, but I don't know if I'll take time. So here's that one section that we had replaced the boilerplate code with all of this to get with our for each loop going through creating all of our checkboxes, right? Well, I can just remove this whole div here. Okay, I'll cut that. By the way, here's a chance to show you. Remember I mentioned there was a bit of a trick. If you do need to use the checkboxes and you're copying that code from one view to another, you notice as soon as I even just paste it back in, it messes up all the formatting, right? But there's a trick I learned. If you go Control Z just once, it puts the formatting back, right? Because the paste happens and then instantly it reformats it to its best of its ability and messes it up on us. So one quick Control Z and it puts the automatic reformatting back the way it was. So it undoes that basically. So good thing to know in case you're ever going to do that again. But I don't really want the whole thing anyway, so I'll just take it out. Okay. So instead, all I'm really going to do is throw in a div very much the same as the other ones here in my form. Right? I just have a label, right, for bats assigned, and then here's a div with the list box in it, right? I'm calling it selected bats at this point. Multi-select list, so we're just casting my bats collection that I added. Remember, I created in my controller here a multi-select list, added it to this dynamic property, the view bag. When I pull it out, I just need to cast it basically so it knows that this is a multi-select list. And that's all there is to it. So now I have that. I can do the same thing in the create as well, I guess. Right? Just come down, grab the whole div for the checkboxes. Get rid of some of this extra white space. And just paste that in. And that's it. Now I'm ready to use a single multi-select list box instead. There's some problems with this approach though. Oh, okay, what am my browser I'm in? Okay, I'll bring it over here. Right, so here I am. So I have a create. I can actually add a new player. Date of birth. Oh, I even have a number there I can pick from. Team, my Blackhawks team. And with a multi-select, we know how these work. You can put a little prompt on the screen for people. You just hold Control, and you can click multiple values, right? Click Create, and there it is. I can edit, right? If I select them all, okay? And if I want to go back in, take one out, there's a problem, right? As soon as you click any of the ones here, you unselect everything. If you remember to Control before you click, then you can toggle each one independently, right? And that works fine, but people will tend to mess that up. So that's one of the problems. And then they don't remember, oh, gee, which ones were selected? You know, I only wanted to change one of them, and I can't remember now what the current selections were. So that's one of the problems with this approach. Plus, I only have 3 here, but if I had a whole bunch, 20 or 30 or 50, right? Sure, I could scroll up and down, and that would be fine. But, eh, again, I'm going to have the same issue. Once they're out of sight, I can't remember which ones I've got clicked and which ones I don't. So there's a real problem with that approach using just a single. What people are commonly used to seeing on the web is like 2, where you can just move them back and forth. And that way you see the complete list of sort of selected ones and then the other available ones. So that's probably the next thing to look at is, okay, that was really easy. We changed one line of code and changed the control we're presenting, right? But with a bit more work, we can improve it even more. Now, what I was working on just before we started this demo was, when we get down to it, a lot of what we're about to do is very reusable for other many-to-many relationships if I get away from using the word bats everywhere, right? So to make it a bit more reusable adds a touch more complexity to this demo, but I think it's worthwhile in the end. Okay, so what we want to do then is we have to come back to our populate assigned bat data here, right? There's a few other changes to make. One thing I'm going to get away from is this whole business in here of, remember, we're passing in this array called selected bats. Okay, so I really want to get away from that. So let's do just the control. I could use refactoring as well, I guess. I'm just going to call it selected options. So just be careful that I don't just replace. There's 10 occurrences. There we go. Okay. So selected options, I'm going to use that instead. So I'll have to make sure in my views that it corresponds to the name of the list box, because that's how I get this name. When the list box comes in, or renamed every checkbox with the same thing, right? It had to have the same name. So that's just making it more generic. That's not really part of the functionality change we're looking at. Okay, so coming down here, populate assigned bat data. Well, we still want to do basically this. We're going to get all the bats, pull the ones that the player actually has used. But instead of a single view model, right, collection, a new list of, we're going to make 2 of them. Why? We're going to make separate lists of the ones that are selected and the ones that aren't. Now, the truth is, another change we could make with this approach is this in the view model, the assigned, right? That Boolean that we added to the view model, we won't even really need that anymore, because we're just going to create separate collections of the ones that are selected and the ones that are not selected, so they're available to be selected, right? So I'll just change this for each loop as well. I might as well just grab the rest, including this line here, right? And we'll just talk about the changes being made in this code. So all we're really doing is then I have separate available and selected lists of our view model objects. And as I loop through, basically, if it's a selected one, I'm going to add it into the selected collection. Else, I add it to the available collection, right? So you see where truth is, I could leave this in here if I did want in some other view somewhere to show checkboxes, right? I would need that Boolean because that corresponds to the checked property of the checkbox. But the way I'm going to use it with separate lists, I don't even need that anymore. In fact, if I find I never need it, I can just go back to the view model and take it out. So that makes sense. We're just going to go through, if it's a currently selected option, we add it to the selected collection. Otherwise, we add it to the available collection, right, as we deal with all of them. And then I add 2 separate, okay, into the view bag, my selected options and my available options. So they're both multi-select lists, right? And away we go. So now I'm able to pass the information to the view so that I can show separately what's currently selected and what's available. So let me come back to my views. So for this, the code I'm going to give here, I was playing around with this just before the break. You could improve on this, I know. Honest, okay? I've been honest with you all along. I am a programmer, not a designer. So I'm sure you can do a much, much better job of this bootstrap and so on here. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace both the submit button, because I worked that into this arrangement, the submit button and this single multi-select list. And this is right in the code to copy and paste from. So what I have here is I'm just using the row and then throwing just some list boxes. I got two separate list boxes. In between them, I have two buttons. I'm just using the glyphicons from Bootstrap to give it a little bit more of a consistent look with other Bootstrap stuff. I'm sure you can make this look much better than what I'm doing, but it's kind of passable, at least for now. So again, what I carefully changed here is I made sure the list boxes were named selected options. So that's the way it passes the right information back. And the other one is called available options or avail options, right? So my two list boxes, so they'll get populated from my two collections in the view bag, and away we go. Oh, got to be careful whenever you copy and paste out of text that's on Blackboard. Blackboard replaces tags that it sees as dangerous to be in Blackboard with XXX. It's nothing pornographic. It just means it doesn't want it to be there. So that's just an input tag, right? Okay. So there we go. So we have an input tag, and that's the only little change I have to make there. So that should work, I think. Let's try it out. Now, of course, if I try to run this right now, right, I'm going to be in edit, and that's going to it's going to bring up an error. But that's okay. I wanted to talk about that. Remember, of course, it's bad request because it's doing what we told it to do. We said if you don't get a valid ID to edit, show the bad request. Oh, good. I'm glad it's doing what it's told. So I'll just go /2 because I think I know there's a record ID2, player ID2, I should say. And so now I should be able to see it. There we go. So if you like the look of that, I mean, you can obviously improve it. What? So I can select, I can do multi-select here, right? Move them all over. Oh, I don't have jQuery yet. Okay, other limitation, obviously, of this approach. The fact that I am relying now on client-side functionality in order to move the items back and forth between the two list boxes. What a surprise. Okay, you probably thought of that already. I did too, I have to be honest, but there we go. So yeah, I can't move anything over here into my bats assigned list box until I fix that up. Okay, all right, well, let's just come back here. Now, to add that code in, okay, that really plays a role in, actually, let me just, might as well do the create here as well. So let me come down, grab the submit button, paste that in again. Oh, I should have taken it out of the other one. Oh well, input. There we go. So I have the code in place in both the create and the edit to display those controls, but I just have to add the functionality. Now, of course, I could come in here and throw in some jQuery, right? And that would be fine. But of course, this is MVC. We want to take advantage of bundling and minification and all that good stuff as well. So instead of just putting a little bit of jQuery in every page, right? I want to also optimize it as much as possible and just do it in one spot. So I can just come to my scripts, add in the scripts folder. Well, look at that JavaScript file right there. Okay. I should call it something, I don't know, multi SEL. I don't know. I should have planned that name out ahead of time, but I didn't. Multi-SEL.js. So there we go. So where am I going to get the code? Well, fortunately, I Googled it. Well, actually, I Bing searched it. You know me. And I got some code here off the internet for the first part of it. You could normally put this in a document ready type thing, but basically I just have a function here for my button right. So I just made sure I named the buttons button right and left for moving them to the right or to the left. Okay. So it just pulls all the, I changed this and I didn't change my, okay. So I've selected options. That's my, that's good to show you that I mess up too, right? Okay. Search and replace would have worked better than this, but sometimes I find thinking it through doesn't hurt. Okay. Ah, thank you. Okay. So thank you to my class for saving me. I missed one. So search and replace would have been safer. I would have found the bug eventually, but anyway. All right, so just one quick one. Just basically, this is just jQuery. You can figure this out. You've done this before. Just pulling out all the selected, okay, options, throwing them into basically an array, and then moving them, right? So moving them one way or the other way. This extra little bit of code, I actually added myself. I'm proud of myself. Okay. One of the issues is when you go to submit any HTML form, right? It works the same with most of the controls that are multi-select controls. Unless something is selected in a list box, it doesn't actually get posted, right? So it looks fine on the form. I think, oh yeah, everything over in this one are the selected ones. But if I don't actually make sure they're highlighted, that they're selected in the HTML, then when I go to post back, they don't get carried over. Actually, it caught me at first. I was trying to figure, how come I'm not getting my values? I went, oh, darn. So that's just a little bit here just to make sure right before I actually post back with the submit button, that actually goes in and selects all the options that are in that particular list box. Okay, so that's good. So I have this new JS file. Now to get that into the bundles and everything, I can come up here to my app start, go into my bundle configuration. If I can use this frequently enough, I can just add it to an existing bundle, right, that was going to be on the page. Probably not the best idea for me at this point because I really don't need to use this everywhere. But if it's the kind of thing that you're going to use because it is more generic now, you might be using this for multiple, then you might just add it into one of the current bundles. But you can always make a new bundle, right? So this bundle I will call, maybe I'll call it multisel. And basically it's just the name of my one script file. .js. Okay, so that should multi-select, right? So that should work fine. That gives me a bundle. It will also be minimized and everything else for me automatically as well. So I'll just save that. So now when I come to create and edit, all I have to do, oh, look at this, scripts render at the bottom. Okay, I can even grab one of these, copy, paste, and I'm just going to change that to my new bundle. So just the pages that need to have access to that. Why don't I, yeah, get a little smarter in my old age here. Okay, so I'll add that in. So I'm going to render that as well. All right. I should pick a different browser so it doesn't open on the opposite screen. Okay. And if I did it right, I should be able to make let's make another new person here. Newest player. Date of birth. Oh, I got something. On to the J's this time. So, nothing to move. Ah, I messed up something. Probably the name of something. Hang on. Okay, found my error. I got a typo here. I got a B in front of options. That's just the name for the list box, the right-hand side list box. So I'll just save that. Hopefully this will work better this time. Once again, creating. I guess I could have tested it without doing that. Yay! Okay. All right. And oh no, I don't want that one after all. I can click save. Now notice how it did for a moment there. You saw it just selected everything. So now it actually worked. I can come in, I can edit somebody that has existing. So it's just added to that collection. No, they don't get Wonder Boy anymore. So it's save. You just see that momentary flash as it does select it. And I think, oh yeah, I did the create already. So the create always comes up with everything just in the available. Now, obviously, if I had lots and lots more options, then I'd get a scroll bar. Well, there is one there, but it would be activated. And I could scroll through. You can change, of course, the styling and how many you want to show at once and all that stuff as well. But, whether you do that or just live with it the way it is, at least it's an option for you, right? So that's any questions about that? I'll post this code and the little files up there, although there's some errors in it. I'll try to fix that as well. Okay, thank you.